Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to a regular meeting of the Madera County Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, April 13th. And before I ask our council to report out of closed session, I'd like to have a roll call since we have a member who is participating remotely.
Supervisor Frazier?
Here.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Here.
Supervisor Rogers?
Here.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Here.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes. All right. Thank you. Council, would you report out?
Luke, I can only see the logo. I can see none of the board.
Thank you, Chair. There are no reportable actions from your closed session. I would
Okay.
like to note that on 2A, I read in Director Alba Gomez, but not Principal Human Resource Analyst Susan Carter as listed on the agenda, and she was present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll open and close the meeting in memory of individuals that supervisors would like to mention. Are there any individuals anybody like to bring up at this time?
Oh, man.
Okay,
I had somebody and my brain has slipped.
That's
not.
that's
With a
okay.
pain on your shoulder, huh?
I'll have to do it later because I'm just really.
That's okay. There's always next week, so that works out. Supervisor Frazier, anybody? There you go. Okay, thank you. All right, and we'll move into the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. We have Pastor John Purcell of Believers Church to lead us in the invocation, and I'm going to ask Dr. Simon Paul to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Let's all pray together. Father, we thank you this morning for your goodness and your mercy. We just stop for a moment to acknowledge you and our need for you in every moment of every day, every breath we take, every heartbeat we have. We ask you, Lord, to just this morning, I just feel impressed to ask for your peace to flood this room and to come upon everyone here, because we know much of what is done and said in this room flows out of here and it affects our community in many different ways. So we ask for your peace and your wholeness and your blessing, your wisdom, all that you have, Lord, to help those that have committed themselves to be servants in governing this county. We thank you, Father, for all that you are. We receive all that you need to give us today, and we thank you for it in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Dr. Paul.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to digress to in memory of, and both men were very beloved in the community, long-term Choctaw members, and we're going to miss them both. Thank you.
Mark was originally from Madera.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madera, a Coyote.
Lived in this area for many, many years.
Yes.
In fact, he was later in life drove in Yosemite Valley, drove one of the buses up there.
Shuttle buses?
Yeah.
Wow, all over the place.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. We'll move into public comment, and just as a reminder to everybody, the first 15 minutes of each regular session are set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matter under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take action on any items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. That gives everybody else a chance to comment, and anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record. So it looks like we have a few folks who would like to speak, so come on up.
Good morning. I'm Sally Moreno, and I'm your district attorney.
I wanted to talk today about something that you all probably saw in the news yesterday, and that was the conclusion of a very involved narcotics, gangs, and guns operation that was conducted jointly by all of the law enforcement agencies here in Madera. So far, there have been 38 arrests, and most of these come out of the very small community of Lavina. And Lavina has basically been plagued by violence and an increase in drugs. And it was the sheriff who began looking at this and starting this very in-depth investigation that resulted in all these arrests yesterday. We came out with over $400,000 worth of drugs, 14 illegal guns on all kinds of drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, 3,500 fentanyl pills. Fentanyl's now being prosecuted almost as a poisoning. It's not even really a drug. It's so dangerous to our community. I just wanted to point out how serious these charges are. These are drug dealers who are dealing drugs to our neighbors and our sons and our daughters in our community. And the law enforcement community here in Madera did an amazing job of coming together to conduct this investigation. As always in Madera, nobody has a thought of what's in it for me or what do I get out of it. It's how do we make our community safer? And when I look at all the members of our narcotics task force, including probation, the police, the sheriff, and all the ancillary agencies who work together, it's just an amazing, amazing time. I wanted to make sure that you understood that. At the close of this investigation, the case gets handed to me and to my office, and we've been riding along from the beginning. And one of the things that we helped with as it came to a conclusion is making sure in these days of $0 bail and COVID and people being released, that we helped filing motions that will require these drug dealers, first of all, to post higher than statutory bail based on the danger they pose to our community. And second of all, to demonstrate that the funds they're posting bail with are not ill-gotten gains. We feel like doing this will help keep these defendants in custody and will facilitate rapid resolution of these cases. As always, now that the case is with my office, we're interested in doing justice, and we'll do that in every case as quickly as we can. And our focus is on keeping Madera safe. So I want to thank the sheriff and all the other agencies who worked together to get this case together to us and let you know we have the ball and we're going to do justice and keep Madera safe. Thank you.
And fantastic, and thank you so much, and great job to the team. And I think you said it right. It's a team effort. So, and that's why we
Absolutely.
get these great results.
Love being here in Madera where everybody works together.
God bless our law enforcement and protect you all, and thank you for the job you're doing for us. Man, what an amazing, amazing thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say also on behalf of the community of Lavina, thank you. This is a start. We will be there with them to keep investing in that area, and it's a wonderful community, and you just made it much safer, the whole team. So just want to thank everybody.
Thank you. All right, next.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Rusty Landsberger, Ag Commissioner here in Madera County. Just wanted to give you a quick update. In conjunction with CDFA, we have issued a notice out to the residents of Madera Ranchos and the Bonadelo Ranchos 9 to start the annual glassy wing sharpshooter treatments. So that notice went out around April 5th of the week of, and there'd be a public meeting on April 20th from 6 to 7 o'clock at night. It will be virtual. Department of Pesticide Regulation, CDFA, California Department of Food and Ag, and my department will be present, answer any questions that residents have about these treatments. And then once that is completed, then prior to treatments, my staff along with CDFA will be out. We'll be knocking on doors in the area where we've had glassy wing finds, and within 150-meter radius of those finds, if the residents will allow, then we will go in and treat with a vendor that we have and to try to control the population of glassy wing sharpshooter. So that should start in May.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. Are there any other members of the public wishing to provide public comment? Anybody out in virtual land? All right. We'll move on to the consent calendar. And are there any items on the consent calendar that a supervisor would like to have further
I just wanted to talk about C&D with Rusty there.
Okay.
And also, I got a call from Jared, I think he's here, that he wanted to pull item J. So I think I don't know, did they tell you, Karen? Or?
Yeah, they're going to move that to April 20th.
Right, okay.
Okay, so
C&D.
Rusty, this all has to do with a sharpshooter.
Yeah, maybe I couldn't catch it. I went back and forth, I can't compare them when I got on here, the two different contracts. One's for 287 and the other one's for 487. I didn't understand. It's almost word for word everything, but two different contracts. And I don't, maybe you can explain why we didn't do it all in one contract or.
Basically, the two different contracts are two different funding sources. One is some federal money that's involved, and the other one is state money that's involved between the two contracts.
I missed it. Oh, was that in there?
I'm not sure if it's specifically, they come through the same source through CDFA,
Oh, okay.
but the funding sources are different.
Different,
So
okay.
basically, item number 7240 deals with our urban areas. So we call that our area-wide citrus trapping and also grape trapping. And so part of that is trapping in areas for detections and fines and delimitation.
Yeah.
And there are also the reimbursements in there for the urban treatments.
Oh, okay.
Under item D7241,
Yeah.
those are grower reimbursements and delimitation. So when there's a fine, CDFA does the initial trapping. Once there's a fine, then our office goes out and does the delimitation. And then with that, if there are affected growers in that, the reimbursements for them to treat those fields comes out of that amount.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Now, urban and rural too, that's a loan that makes a little bit of sense.
Yes.
I appreciate that so much, Rusty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
All right, are there any other items a supervisor would like to have further discussion regarding? If not, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any items that the public would like to discuss further? If
Move
not,
to approve
With item J removed.
yes.
with item J removed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Wheeler,
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier,
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez,
Yes.
Chairman Poitras.
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is out of consent calendar, and it's a open item, discussion item 6A. It is the Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, the second week of April 2021, and I believe we have our sheriff here to talk about what that all means.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, board members. Since 1991, the second full week in April is designated as the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. This week, we recognize and honor the men and women who serve in the field of public safety as dispatchers. These heroes are the lifeline for those having medical emergencies, the lifeline during natural disasters. They speak to suicidal subjects, victims of crimes, and of course, keep track and protect our law enforcement. We're proud of our dispatchers at the Madera County Sheriff's Office who show unwavering commitment to their jobs every day. The Sheriff's Office has 11 full-time dispatchers as well as 2 part-time dispatchers. They provide services for the Madera County, Eastern Madera County Probation Department. They also frequently handle radio communications for Animal Control, the District Attorney's Office, U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, Hensley Lake, Eastman Lake, and probably others. The Madera County Sheriff's Office is proud to celebrate National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week and honor the dedicated and talented dispatchers that serve our communities. We'd like to express our gratitude and appreciation for all the men and women who serve in this field of public safety, and just let them know we're so grateful for their service. Would you like me to also go into 6B directly, or?
Beautiful.
Okay.
That'd be great. It all ties together, yeah.
In conjunction, we'd like to take this opportunity to announce and recognize one of our own amazing dispatchers. Alexis Palacios has been selected as our 2020 Dispatcher of the Year. She was awarded this distinction based on her superior performance above and beyond normal expectations. Throughout the year, Alexis was involved in several critical incidents, most notably an officer-involved shooting as well as a catastrophic creek fire. During these high-stress events, Alexis remained even-tempered, calm, while demonstrating extreme professionalism to both her colleagues as well as the public. Alexis has served as a 911 dispatcher at the Madera County Sheriff's Office since July 2013. He currently serves as a training officer as an integral part of that program. We are so proud to have such an outstanding employee who's dedicated to helping residents and the first responders during these emergencies. Please join me in congratulating dispatcher Alexis Palacios on this recognition for all of her hard work. This is the dispatch supervisor, Erica Hefner. I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Thank you for having us today. We're extremely proud of Alexis and look forward to all the amazing things she's going to continue to do for our county. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
You want to take a photograph?
Yes, Supervisor Gonzalez would like to say something, and maybe a few others would like to chime in, and then we'll gather everybody here to take a picture.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say it's so nice to put a face to a name. I receive the text alerts with your name on them often and several of the others. And so it's very nice to put a name, and you guys are the backbone of the operations and when people call. So thank you so much for all that you do and all of that, your coworkers now do. So thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Rogers.
Yes, Alexis is a person I get texts from regularly, more than any other person probably in the county, and we see her name on everything. And what strikes me as interesting about the job she does, so complicated, it's more than just sending somebody to a situation. She has to discern the situation, what the needs are from the call, and kind of keep abreast of what's going on there the entire time. Because I get the updates and I get the,
Notices.
she knows, it's almost like she has to figure out what's going on there in the field and who's got to be there and how that's got to happen. So what an important role. What a tremendously important role, like being a coordinator for the whole circumstance. And you're the lifeline for those first responders that are out there, maybe by themselves, that need help. And thank you so much for what you do. Powerful, powerful job.
Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you were like Alexa, those things that knows everything, because I get to all those notices and, 24/7. How many hours you work a day? Oh, you are? Okay, that's weird, because I may get these anytime.
Yeah.
So when something happens, we get them. And so
Yep.
it's really nice, and it is neat putting a face to a name that we get, because I just thought you were that little Alexa thing that somebody got me one of those for Christmas, and I got it there, and I kept saying Alexis, and that's because I was so used to your name, I guess, and it wouldn't answer me. And finally, Leslie says, "You got to say Alexa." And I said, "No, what is it? Is that it?"
Yeah, Alexa.
And it'd say, "What can I help you with?" And I said, "Play my country music." And that's all I do. So when I do that to you, put that on there, play some Willie Nelson or Merle Haggard song, and I'll be happy. So great job you guys do. It's got to be a tough job. Thank you for taking her for this.
All right. Any other comments? Alexis, I'm the only one that doesn't get any text from you, so I guess I need to sign up for them or something. So
Yeah, you got to sign up for it. Yeah.
there you go, and get security
You don't
clearance.
get all that, huh?
Nothing. Yeah,
man.
she
You just
just,
don't know what
I
you're
asked,
missing.
I know, exactly, all the excitement.
Just
So
get home and say, "Alexa, I need."
Well, I think that's important. We get phone calls sometimes from people, hey, what's happening with this or that? And
We have the information.
the fact that we know is really, really great. And you keep us informed is awesome. Thank you so
very
much.
good. Well, thank you. Well, Mike, I'd like to ask my colleagues to join me, as well as the sheriff and dispatchers, as we honor our telecommunicators. Okay. That's great. You know, you guys are the stars, so we're going to put you right here in the middle. So, for some reason, we have two of these proclamations. So, this would be for one that you can, you know what, since you're the dispatcher, you're the one to keep that. And this one, it actually illuminates, so when you're in that dark room, dark area, you look at the screen, this thing is really bright. You know? So, anyway, so there you go. Well, really cool, but anyway. It sounds good. It sounds good. Come on up, take a picture. You have to Supervisor Frazier, I gave everybody 2 fist bumps and handshakes for you. One for me, one for you. There you go.
I appreciate that. That's good leadership.
Very good. Now we have an opportunity to hear from Dr. Paul on item 6B, an update on COVID-19 and the current vaccination administration status.
Great. Thank you, Chairman of the Board, members, for the opportunity for the quick update. As far as case rates in Madera County, those have increased slightly, which isn't a total surprise given the increased openings. Schools are more open, sports are open, things like that. We're not seeing any increase in hospitalizations. There has been a drop-off in testing rates, and we're working to try and increase that, planning to increase mobile testing, because as you know, increasing testing rates can balance out a slight increase in case rates to keep our metrics, year system improving. But it's not a very significant change, but they're basically flat or a slight increase. Again, not a complete surprise. With vaccination, we're up to about 27% of the county, 42,700 individuals have had at least one dose, 17% have been completely vaccinated. And that's actually pretty even coverage throughout the geographic areas of the county. The highest, 40%, is actually area D1, the Ranchos. Most areas are right at about 30%. The one area that's low has been lagging is Chowchilla, area B, and we're working to increase vaccination rates there. In the last week or two, we reopened to, I think since April 2nd, anybody age 16 and above, and that has helped fill clinics. We're not seeing clinics fill up in an hour like we were originally. It takes several days for clinics to fill up. Some of our original outreach to ag was initially very successful with large employers. We got a lot of people. With smaller employers, we're seeing problems such as people may not be working, it's not harvest time yet, things like that, and they're not getting as many people coming in the door as they had hoped. We're continuing to work on that, but have also started to transition to working with schools. Now that older kids, juniors and seniors in high schools may be eligible, they're interested in getting vaccinated to avoid quarantining for sports, for school, and also because it'll likely be required for many colleges. But not just for the students, we think this is actually an excellent way to outreach to their parents. One of the big concerns for kids returning to schools is their older family members, other people in the household could be at risk for infection. Now, the child may be able to get vaccinated if they're 16 and above, but even if they're not, outreach through the schools can be a good way to outreach to parents, family members to get them to come in. And our initial attempt will be with Madera Unified, and that filled up almost immediately. We had over 600 people interested in getting vaccinated almost immediately after we announced it. So we think that will be very helpful, and hopefully we'll get the ag workers at home if we don't catch them at work. We're about 39% of the people vaccinated are Hispanic. That's been increasing and starting to get closer to the balance in the county. As you heard announced today, Johnson & Johnson is temporarily on pause because there's 6 cases of a rare complication. None of those cases were in California. In our efforts of the 60-something thousand vaccinations, only 2,000 were Johnson & Johnson. So having to pause on that not actually have a big effect on our overall numbers and ability to
What was
vaccinate.
that, what was that again, the numbers?
To a total of Johnson & Johnson's 2,800 out of 65,000. So it won't have a big impact on our overall program and ability to vaccinate. It was very convenient to have a single dose vaccine for special circumstances, such as people being discharged from the hospital, places where it's hard to get out and give a second dose.
Right.
But we can work to adjust for that, and it's possible they may decide that the cases are so rare or not possibly connected to the vaccine that they could allow people to continue using it. The bigger concern is it'll raise sort of more vaccine hesitancy, which I think we're already encountering. The number of cases is incredibly low. It's about 1 out of 1 million, but it's such a rare complication that it's easy to pick up cases, even if there's very few of them. So I think overall that's the major points from the update with the vaccination. Like I said, our plans are to continue our main vaccination sites, increase the volume and efficiency at the fairground site, and start to work with the schools in addition to ag to try and increase our numbers.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Paul and Sarah, for all that. It only, you know, I hate that when we see something like that Johnson & Johnson, because, you know, I got a lot of naysayers up there, and one person yesterday I met actually said they were going to get the Johnson & Johnson, they didn't want the other ones, and now this comes out, you know, it just, gosh, just really hurts me, I tell you, because I've really been trying to promote it to get people get shot. I tell you. I don't know what the answer is or anything else, but and I've been getting tested every 2 weeks. You know, even though I've had my shot for almost 2 months now, my second one, and to help those numbers. And I've tried to explain it a few times on Facebook and stuff, but still a few of those naysayers do it. So I'm trying. So. Out to anybody out there in Radio Land or whatever this is, just listen to this meeting. Please get tested. If you're up there in the mountains tomorrow from 9 to 12 in Oakhurst, so at Mountain Christian Center, or you can go to Rite Aid now almost any day and get it done. They're all free. They don't cost you nothing. Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Rogers.
So we put the Johnson & Johnson completely on hold for now. I think that's probably a wise move. There's a study in Israel that has determined its lack of effectiveness against the new variants that are even coming out, like from South Africa and the UK, and they had 8 cases out of 10, I think it was, or I can't remember the exact number, but they had 8 cases of reinfection after, or say not reinfection, but infection after taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. You familiar with that study?
The one I'm most familiar with from Israel is the good news, which is that they primarily used the Pfizer, and that worked well against the B117, which is the variant that's really taking off in the U.S. right now. To date, we've seen 5 variants reported. We don't know actually how many they've sequenced. We had 1 South African, 2 of the UK variants, and 2 of the California variants. There is not a lot of data. The best data is what you mentioned from Israel, showing that clinically the Pfizer vaccine works with the B117. There's a lot of in vitro studies saying this vaccine may or may not work as well. It's hard to know if that means they will or will not work clinically. So yes, and it is very frustrating, like what you're saying, having to hold the vaccine after telling people to get the vaccine. But I think 2 things, and people have a hard time balancing the risk. 1 in a million sounds like 1 out of 10 when people start thinking about it. The side effects are incredibly rare, and I think the one thing to keep in mind is it does show that all of these vaccines are being monitored, so that side effects that are happening at 1 in a million kind of level, they're being picked up, they're being acted on. And that's what we said from the beginning. The vaccines are pretty new, and people are keeping a close eye on them to make sure they're safe and what the safety level is.
Right.
Now that millions have been given out, you know that it's safe for millions of people for this amount of time, and you pick up side effects at these really low levels. But yeah, it's frustrating.
Do you know a number approximately? I mean, just how many people have been actually vaccinated to this point?
I don't want to guess. It's between I think 1 and 200. It's about 30% of the population in the U.S., 30 to 40%. I think it's
okay.
36.
So that'd be 100 million somewhere in there.
100 plus million. So it's between 1 and 200 million.
That's significant. I mean, that statistically, that's a big sample. So thank you. I appreciate knowing that. and I'm sure others do too. Your health is important, and you want to be discerning on these things. You don't want to just haphazardly and enter into anything. And it's very difficult to trust your government when the government says this and that, and you just don't accept that. You want to hear it from health professionals. Thank you.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Paul, I was one of the recipients of the Johnson & Johnson, and just so the public is aware, my only side effects were a slight headache and a little bit of nausea, but I got through it. But what are some of the side effects that people should be concerned about for the public's knowledge regarding that vaccine?
Oh, so most of the side effects are what you said, trivial. They can be enough to make you stay home from work for a day. Johnson & Johnson is actually less side effects than the second dose of Moderna and Pfizer. With those, it's inflammation. It's aches, chills, headaches, goes away after a day. As far as the specific complication, the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, that you clearly have something that's not right. Severe headaches, abdominal pain, weakness in the legs. You're very, very sick, and clearly you would need to go and get medical attention. Again, none of those 6 cases happened in California. There's 1 death. The other 5 are hanging in there. I don't know their current status, but they're being treated.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Supervisor Frazier, is anything you'd like to ask? You don't have a...
No, that was the question, asking for a friend. I got the Johnson & Johnson as well. So, of course, now I'm going to feel like I have a really bad headache the rest of the day, worried about that. So I think I'll be fine.
The complications happen.
I'll help you with that.
2 to 3 weeks after the vaccination phase. Once you get past 2 to 3 weeks, you're out of the window where the problem was seen. But again, people have hard trouble balancing risk. Something special about vaccines. 1 in a million people are worried. If you go for surgery, they tell you you've got a risk of 1 in 100 of this and of that, right? And people are okay. But 1 in a million, and it's shut down.
Right.
And the other plus is we do have other options. So even if it is a 1 in a million complication, if the other vaccines don't have that complication, we'll move to those. So.
Sure. Well, thank you. And are there any members of the public who have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. At 10:30, it's a little bit past 10:30, so that means that it's time for our public hearing, public presentation, and that would be the GSA report. And this would be the monthly update. And we have Stephanie Agnagnesson with others that will we're going to help her out in her presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Stephanie Agnagnesson, Director of Water and Natural Resources at the county. And yes, we do have others online and with me. Mike Linden is here to help, Deputy County Counsel. Greg Young is here from Tully and Young online. Brian Thorson, engineer and scientist from David's Engineering. Duncan McEwen, economist from ERE Economics, and Kevin Kostick from Raftellus, our rate consultant, are here to listen.
Loaded us up.
Okay, I'm going to project the presentation. Okay. So today is your informational update that we do monthly. We're going to talk a little bit about outreach, then we'll talk through some conceptual options for recharge. We'll talk a little bit about land repurposing. We're calling that strategic agricultural land conservation. And then I have some key questions for you. So briefly, in terms of outreach, we're doing a ton, but it's all in service of these programs, which is to say recharge, talking through an allocation, land repurposing, and a water market. I put a question mark there because it's, of course, a simulation that we're playing. So briefly from January, you can see we're kind of averaging 4 or 5 meetings a month. We have our GSA meeting as well as briefings on each of our programs, the water market, the land repurposing, and the allocation using satellite ET. In February, we did a recharge webinar as well. Jeannie did a presentation to over 200 people statewide on the integrated regional water management and our regional water management group. We had our standard informational meeting for the county GSA. The Madera Sub-Basin Work Group met, and then we launched year one of the water market. Moving ahead to March, we had a county GSA meeting. We're meeting with the Cattlemen's Association. The Chowchilla Sub-Basin Advisory Committee met. And then we combined a couple of programs, land repurposing and recharge on March 23rd for one webinar. And now looking at April, we participated in a land repurposing webinar that was statewide with multiple parties and a fairly sizable audience. We started in office hours where people can just drop in on Zoom to ask questions or chat about anything that's pressing with the county GSA. We're here today at the board meeting, and we're doing office hours again 2 Thursdays from now, April 22nd. We are doing additional outreach with the MAWA, the grower group, as well as doing some analysis of where the small farmers are within all sub-basins. So if there are small farmers and small operations that may not be as well versed on SGMA, we're going to do some additional outreach to them. We also have some conservation workshops for residents planned in May and August. So fairly robust outreach, but it's all in service of the allocation and moving us ahead with recharge and land repurposing as well. So now I'd like to touch on a couple of options for recharge. So there's basically 3 models that we have, and I'll walk you through each of them. So let's start with the public model. This is the very traditional public agency model where the GSA purchases land. It's on behalf of everybody within the GSA, and the benefits, meaning bringing water in, those are shared among people in the GSA. There is a leave behind if you're doing recharge projects in each of these options. So that's the public version. At the other extreme is a private option. So that means the landowner is making the investment on his or her property. That would also include kind of pumps and water rights and everything that goes along with that. And then the benefits would go mostly to the landowner with a small leave behind percentage. The mixed or hybrid option, and this was what was in our grant, the Prop 68 funds for recharge, is a partnership, a private-public partnership where the landowner and the GSA make investments, and then the benefits are shared proportionally. And both Duncan and Brian on the phone have worked on that a bit, but let me walk you through that. So basically, you talk about what entities contributed to the project and the operation, what costs were incurred by each party, what benefits are going to result, and what the leave behind percentage would be. So what we would like to do is develop a framework that could be used in the hybrid or public-private option that would be fairly fixed, where we go through this process and then we can proportionally share the benefits. This is fairly cost effective, meaning it's not a public agency having to do outright land purchases, which is probably the most expensive option, and it would allow for sharing of benefits. So conceptually, what that looks like in this mixed or hybrid option is that you establish life cycle costs of the recharge project, identify who is paying what, that's who's buying the pump, who's doing the water rights application, who would do maintenance, establish the benefits in terms of how much water could be sunk into the ground, and then you proportionally allocate the benefits. So that's kind of simplifying this process, but that was what we went through with our grant application. And I think it's a very strong option for moving ahead in that it allows for public-private partnership. So I'm going to shift briefly with time at the end for questions. So our Strategic Agricultural Land Conservation, or SALC program, is something we've been working on with Brian and Duncan as well. in this, we would essentially repurpose land. And that is a phrase that can mean retire, but it could mean other things. It's taken out of agricultural production, but it could still be used for recharge or for other things. So for currently irrigated land, we're quantifying costs in terms of how to structure this. So we're essentially, as the water agency, buying the sustainable yield and transitional water off the irrigated land. So SALC is acquiring the water savings in a way that most conservation programs work. You buy the water savings from something. That would mean that that person doesn't have access to the sustainable yield or the transitional water anymore, but they're going to be paid something. So we're going to look a little bit at those costs. So that's the option for currently irrigated land. For non-irrigated lands, we are having an interesting conversation. We could potentially acquire sustainable yield, the water that's there naturally through percolation and infiltration from those lands. When we've talked with people about what that would look like, there's certainly interest from the non-irrigated lands, but they would need to convince the irrigated lands to pay for that program, right? I mean, I think Duncan and Brian can structure any sort of land repurposing program we want, but it needs to successfully go through a Prop 218. So that's kind of the tricky part. So now let's look a little bit at the costs. This is what would happen if we paid irrigated land and essentially bought water savings from them. You can see in the second bullet, there's numbers of acre feet per year that we would be purchasing. So if we did 25% of our work this way, there would be costs in the Madera Subbasin ranging from $35 to $75. And the reason that range is so large is it depends how you're distributing them. If you have everybody paying in, you're going to have a smaller amount per acre, right? That's the $35. If only irrigated acres are paying into a program, it would be that higher amount, the $75. So I think those costs are fairly palatable. That's a pretty small program. That's only doing 25% of the demand reduction this way. So then if we scale up the program to 50%, you can see the range is going way up. And part of that is in Duncan's work, there is a fair amount of land that could be purchased at a smaller amount. But as you get a bigger program, the land is going to cost more. You understand intuitively. So the range here, and I'm just using Madera as the example since they're 70% of the land we were given to manage. If all lands were to participate, meaning irrigated and unirrigated, it's around $80 an acre. And then if only irrigated participate, it's $230. So you're seeing the costs go up significantly at that point. So then the last option, which we're not recommending, but we are just showing so you have a sense of what those costs are if you did all of your demand management through this sort of program. So it's that whole quantity that you've seen a bunch of times, the 90,000 acre feet per year in Madera that needs to be reduced. And you can see those costs come in pretty high, like 190 to 755, and 755 would be what people would pay per acre if only the irrigated acres were assessed. So you've seen some costs. The third column is some fairly large numbers where that would be doing demand reduction at $31 million a year. So now I have a couple of key questions. So we talked through recharge, about models that we could use. There's the public model where the public agency does all the work and buys the land. There's a private model where private citizens are doing all of the work and getting most of the credit for that water. And then there's a hybrid or mixed approach, and that's how the grant was structured. So that's one question. For the strategic agricultural land, you saw a 25%, a 50%, and 100%. model. If there's any feelings about what % of our demand reduction we should do through this land repurposing, that would be good to hear. And then there's 3 key questions for allocations. One is if you're grouping a farm unit together, putting irrigated and never been irrigated together, how much would you put as unirrigated land? So we've talked through 25% and 50%. I think the intent with an allocation isn't to have 1 irrigated acre and 1,000 unirrigated acres and let all of that sustainable yield be transferred onto 1 irrigated acre. We've talked a little bit in the past about size limits on the farm units. You can currently, the allocation approach adopted in December does not have restrictions on the farm units. They just have to be within the same zone. And then the third question is a little bit trickier, but I'd be glad to walk through some options, which is what date do you use when allowing transition water to be opted in? I know we have heard from the board a lot of frustration over people who are currently planting. And to be clear, there are people who are currently planting. We could go back in time to the Sigma, that would be December of 2014. We could choose a GSP adoption date, that's December of 2019. We could choose a date the allocation approach was adopted, that would be December of 2020. And we could choose a date that's in the future as well. I think the key is what would a reasonable person, what would their expectations be about having their groundwater restricted? And there's a fair amount of legal analysis on this that Deputy County Counsel Mike Linden is working on as well. So this leads us to the end of the informational part of the presentation. I would be glad to take your questions or feedback.
Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, and very analytical questions, very well put together presentation, in fact.
Thank you.
In my opinion, recharge, you know, I like all of the above, honestly, keeping our options open there. I know I plan on doing some recharge on property that I own and just on a private level, moving some dirt and creating basin and drainage to that point. And I know there are others who are talking about that, but there are projects that are much larger in locations where the ground is receptive to massive recharge, such as the Triangle T operation where they recharge significant amounts. I believe it was 40 to 60,000 acre feet in one season. So if we can achieve something like that on a corporate level together, working together to have a piece of land that achieves in regions that kind of recharge, I think we're going to be better off money-wise. You're going to plug in much smaller dollars into something like that. Can we go back to your options as far as not just the recharge, but the entire, you had the questions there. I wanted to,
sorry.
yeah. You were talking about, let's see, repurposing and on the rate study. I was just doing some quick math, and $30 million, now that's an annual figure, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so $30 million, if you looked at $30 million over the course of a year in a $2 million industry, or $2 billion industry, that's 1%, 1.5%. That's not a lot in terms of mitigations for the corporate industry of Madera County. However, we're only talking about a percentage of the land, right? We're not talking about all of it.
So the $31 million would be if you did full demand management.
Full demand management, right.
And it would be, I mean,
that would be the bulk of agricultural land, right?
Within the county GSA.
Yeah, And that includes, I mean, most of the land, right? Oh, except for this CWD and MID, right?
Right,
If they're in
just
CWD
county
and MID.
GS,
So that's
yes,
just white areas.
that's right.
Okay, so yeah, my thinking is skewed there. We'd have to know what percentage of benefit in annual economic dollars we were talking about to understand what the percentage true percentage would be. You can't have the entire county percentage in that dollar figure. It doesn't make sense. So that would be an interesting amount to know. It's probably not as near as good as I painted. So maybe you could look at it from that standpoint. Look at the economics versus the outlay in each of those scenarios. Cost benefit ratio analysis.
I'm sure Duncan could do that. Do you want to compare 50% and 100% maybe?
Yeah, that would. I think that would help. I think it's something that, after all, dollars turn the wheels, right?
I've heard that.
Yeah. So I think that really makes sense to go after a cost benefit ratio analysis, just in that particular area. And probably the gentleman to my left here would have better answers on that than I would, being a banker and et cetera. Good mathematician too.
On that full demand management too, even looking at what the current crop would be, or what it's grossing, bringing in, you'd have to look at, it'd be cutting down the amount of water coming out too, which would bring the yields way down all in 1 year.
Right.
So
It's complicated.
And that would be, I think that would be devastating. Here's a $31 million bill. By the way, you can't grow anything to pay it.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
No. So immediately you get an answer right there. See, the full mitigation is not going to be the answer at all just in that cost benefit analysis. So I think cost benefit analysis really contributes a lot of information to the picture there. Thanks, Brett. That was great. That clarified exactly what I was trying to say.
Very good. If there's no other questions right now from other colleagues, I would, can you go back again to those questions? First
Sure.
of all, the questions, are they like questions to be answered later on, today? Are they just, or is this kind of rhetorical in terms of things we need to figure out over the next few months? So
I think ideally, we need
direction.
clear direction, and we may want to bring back a resolution with the allocation items in there finalized. And so your feedback, so I can come back with a resolution,
Okay.
is desired.
Very good. So I have a couple questions here on the recharge, and you ask, is there a preferred model for recharge, public, private, or hybrid mixed? Now, could there be a private and a hybrid option?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for a private option, what would that, let's say there's somebody who already has they happen to be in the white area, but they already have access to, say, MID water because, say, the parcel next to it is pipelined, and that white area parcel happens to be pipelined. Would there be much of a cost involved for that private? It sounds like it would be kind of like an automatic delivery system.
I think there are some very low-hanging fruit like that, or people who are in existing water rights applications for water on the bypass.
Okay.
right?
Gotcha.
So they've kind of done a lot of the legwork. They may have expended funds. So the question would just be, what would that leave behind look like? And typically there is one ranging from like 10 to 20%, just so that the basin gets some credit for being there.
Right. So it sounds like in that regard, there are those who, would participate in a private and also a hybrid slash mixed. And I'm not sure that a public option is necessary because it could be that there's enough land and enough participants in a private or a hybrid method that would take all the excess water anyway. Because, we talk about, this 215 water, and it really doesn't happen very often.
Yes.
And
Right.
yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody, it's kind of like, at a GSA stage, it's like, oh yeah, whenever we get this 215 water, man, we're gonna, and
It's only 10% of the time.
it's only 10% of the time and maybe in 5% of the season.
Yeah.
So it's like, it comes in,
Waves.
in waves in, say, February when nobody wants it. And so, anyway, so that would be, at least for me, and I'm not sure about my colleagues, but I would be looking at, say, a private and a hybrid system. Skipping SALT and going down to allocations, if irrigated and never been irrigated land is grouped together in a farm unit, how much unirrigated land can be included? And I think some of that depends on, are they in the basin or not, right? Or no, I guess it all has to be.
They would have to be in the subbasin, yeah.
It'd have to be in the subbasin, okay. Is there any recommendations from you in regards to that?
I think you're looking at somewhere between 25 and 50%. I mean, you do not want someone to have all unirrigated land and a little bit of irrigated land, and that this is really a shell game where the water is moved. We're
Right.
really, the intent when Greg and I developed this with the advisory committee is let's create something that mimics real world operations. And often people have irrigated and unirrigated that they're managing as one operation.
Right. So really, for the health of the basin and for what we are looking to achieve, it would be, I would tend to go to the lower number.
To the 25%.
25%. I'm not sure what my colleagues, how they feel about that, but it seems like there's a lot of land.
You're right.
Yeah, virgin land that is really, it's not taking away how it's being used right now, really. So in that regard. So, all right, so back to the questions. Sorry.
I'm the same way. They're complicated questions.
They are, and I'm sorry, we talked through ways of doing this. I'm not sure there's a better way than getting your feedback now.
Right, no,
So thank you.
That's wonderful, thank you. Are there size limits on the farm units? I would say no. I mean, we're talking about a basin, not really what the size of the farms are.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah. And
Okay.
it depends on, if somebody runs, 10,000 acres, it's going to be in the wide area, it's going to be up to them to determine how they want to allocate those acres and how they're going to reduce those acres within that system. And then what date should be used for allowing transitional water to be opted in? We talked about this a few months ago, and we talked about some dates, and I remember there was a graph, and it showed 2015, and then it showed water use actually going up.
Yeah.
True.
To 20.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020. And I believe at the time, we were really leaning towards the 2014 or 2015 date. And the reason is because probably a lot of the folks that were participating in the increased water usage knew that we would be going this direction. And I believe I use the example of our own family farming unit. We knew when the law came out in 2014 what the what it was going to
What's
be.
gonna
And,
be doing.
and my brother asked David, just tell us what the rules are. We know this is coming. Give us the rules.
I've got the letter still.
You got the
I
letters?
mean, it was to the point.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to know how much I've got to work with, that's all.
That was it. And again, we're not exactly, at the time we were 300 acres and not the most, I guess, sophisticated type of farming operation, but we knew at that point. So I'm saying there's a lot of people north of us in terms of acreage and operations and expertise and so forth that knew. So, I mean, I would lean toward, again, that 2015 date. If this wasn't such a critical issue that it is, and if it was just like, oh, well, yeah, we're, it's no biggie, we're all this, it's just a little bit of water, that we're losing, and no, it's not. It's an extremely critical issue, and
Right.
and the law was, it came from Sacramento when we were experiencing these issues and the dropping in our water tables and the need to keep a sustainable level to actually protect agriculture. So I would lean towards that, and I'm not sure about my colleagues what their thoughts are.
What date was the law passed?
It was December of 2014.
Okay, so I would give it a year from that point, and if you didn't know about it by then, I was getting calls, honestly. I was getting calls from people who were speculating at that point. They were going to buy and do trees, and they asked me, am I going to be grandfathered in? I said, when you know that the situation is what it is, and you're asking me that question, I said, nobody's going to be grandfathered in. I said, you're not going to get away with being greedy at this point. It's going to hit you. I warned those people over and over again that would call me and ask me, can I get away with buying this and that and doing this? There's getting away with?
Mm-hmm.
You know the answer to the question before you ask it.
Right. That's Supervisor Wheeler, Supervisor Rogers, did you have a?
Yeah, that was all I wanted to
That's all
comment
you
on.
had to say, okay. We'll go to Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you. 4 or 5 years ago, Stevie gave us a number, about 40,000 acres has been converted from rangeland to irrigated land at Madera County. And now that we got our new guy here, Rusty, could you just give us an update in the future here, how many acres we've had converted like that? And my question is on it is how many of those acres are in these basins? They're a little bit higher, maybe, they might not be in any of these basins. So, me and Max, we tried to get a moratorium on doing that, but we couldn't get it pushed through. They had a bunch of farmers here one time that was going to hang us. So, but I'd like to know what that number is, because that's one of our biggest problems. I still say what they're doing with that, putting their pistachios or almonds in, all that land that we had range land for cattle and for dry wheat farming and stuff, so which I don't think they even do it in Madera County anymore. But that would be interesting to know, and if it is still converting a lot, I want to know what that is, and we might have to address that too, if they're in these water basins that are.
What might be good, Tom, is to get a trend, a 5-year trend of what's happened, since the law passed. That would be, since the law passed, how much had been converted and where it's at.
Yep.
I think we can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the baseline year was in what Stevie did, though.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
I got notes at home, but
You just start it from
Rusty might be able to find it in the office. I don't know.
Okay.
start
She
from
gave us a report on it. You guys
2015 is the magic date, the beginning.
Yes.
So
be somewhere around that time.
because it seemed like there was an explosion of conversion at that point, and we know why. We know exactly why they were doing it. Trying to beat
making millions of dollars off of the damn nuts. I know.
Well, they were trying to beat the system
Well, they're trying to beat
because they
that.
knew the law was coming,
Mm-hmm.
and they were trying to get their crop planted in the convert the land before, anything happened.
Before the hammer dropped.
Yeah.
So I can work with Rusty on that analysis, and I know Mike will have some legal analysis as well.
Yeah. And, I don't want to sound like I fault the people for trying to make a buck farming. I want to just make it clear that, that's the American way. You try to make a buck farming, and you try to make money doing what you can do. But knowing the circumstances, knowing what's coming down, and knowing how serious it is, it's a very precarious position that we're in.
So, Stephanie, with that, what items do you need more clarification on?
Well, if there's any other opinions, I would love to hear those.
Okay, can you go back to the question?
Sure.
Yeah, can we get to the questions? Yeah,
That's very helpful.
And I don't think I control that. I think thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. So we've talked about, I think, the recharge thing. We've talked about the 3 points within the allocations. I think the last thing to do would be the SALT as their preferred percent of land repurposing for the rate study.
Yeah.
So I think I would probably need to have more
A little more analysis on that, I think.
Yeah, and I think we ought to really look at making it expensive to convert that, because you know what that does to our water people. They do. Just the prime example, right here to McKinney Ranch, right out here on 145, when they put all those pistachios and that Madeira Country Club, what that is in there, all the wells went dry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were calling me up there, what can we do about it? Our wells are going dry here, They all of them had to drill, 200 or 300 feet deeper there. Mm-hmm. So if we have a penalty that says that, you're going to convert this, 600-acre section of land and that's in these basins, it's going to cost you more than what numbers you're even talking about here.
It's non-irrigated land. I mean,
Right.
they're drawing the water straight out of the aquifer with no replenishment.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Counterintuitive.
Big time.
for
Yes,
what we're
it's a
looking
big
to
problem.
do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would really stick that to them. I mean, I like to see people make money on their land and anything else. I mean, I've made money on some of the lands I've dealt up there in the mountains. It's nothing like down here.
Sure.
But we got to think about everybody. We
Yeah.
cannot think about the few that own thousands of acres that wants to do this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So we got thousands of people that we got to take care of.
Mhm.
And without water, how are you going to take care of it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I had a
Mm-hmm.
comment. I was trying to hold all my comments till the end, so I'm kind of with everybody on the private and hybrid mixed. I think the public recharge is like a last resort because it'll cost a lot more and get a lot less done, and it'll end up. So I think private and hybrid mixed are the way to go. In terms of the irrigated and never been irrigated land being grouped together as a farm unit, so if they group it together as a farm unit and that can no longer be opted out as unirrigated land, correct?
So if they're grouping it together, they would need to pay for sustainable yield on all of it.
Right, versus if they don't group it in a farm unit, then they don't have to pay anything on it, correct?
Right. If they do not want to exercise their overlying right and they don't want to pay the sustainable yield and they're not going to water, that's fine. It would not be in a farm unit.
And then because you also got to realize that a lot of this never been irrigated land. It's been a benefit to our aquifer for a lot of years too. Not taking anything and being able to still use it for its best and highest use. And if its best and highest use is to be in a farm unit, then it will protect it from being converted or somebody buying up a part of it and just doing a portion of that never been irrigated land. Buy 600 acres and then plant 100 is what I see what would probably end up happening down the road. So keeping it as unirrigated would be by allowing it to be in the farm unit. Would there be a different allocation for never been irrigated land, or would it still be just the exact same? Because the more land that we bring in under it, it cuts down the allocation, correct, for everybody?
That's right. But if the farm unit included irrigated and unirrigated land, the unirrigated is only going to pay for the sustainable yield in order to use that water on the irrigated.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to, it would not make economic sense to put the unirrigated land in the farm unit into production, because then they would get to a shortage faster.
Unless some.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if they sold off that never been irrigated land, and there's no, so then whoever the new owner is, it's not, they create their own farm unit and start irrigating a portion of it and let the other portion of it balance the rest of that.
I think what you're getting at is we need a process for sales and how the farm unit could change. That's a good
I
point.
think so too.
Yeah.
Because people do sell things, their farm units would change over time. We need to be able
true.
to reflect that. Okay, I can work on that.
And I would imagine there'll be, I mean, we've already seen a lot of people moving out to Idaho and different areas. This might help that too. And so we'll have to have something like that in place.
Very good. Any other questions from supervisors, comments? Stephanie? Yes, Supervisor?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's move to public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to talk about this item?
Good morning, Christina Beckstead, Executive Director of Madera County Farm Bureau. Thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. You always, as usual, you do an excellent job. Going through kind of the comments one by one, or the three topics. On recharge, I think it's important, as we've reiterated time and time again, to keep all tools in the toolbox. So being able to access all three of those options is probably a good idea, although focusing efforts on the two that are probably easier to accomplish and more cost effective, which would be the hybrid and the private. But definitely not to limit any of that, and that we all know that there is county ground that could probably be beneficial for recharge purposes that could benefit the GSA as a whole.
No, it isn't, right.
On the SALC, Supervisor Rogers, you mentioned doing a cost-benefit analysis on the 50 to 100%. I think that's a waste of time and resources. You should probably look at the 25 to 50%, because
Yeah, I didn't specify. I just said on any of the items needs a cost benefit analysis. I'm not leaning toward one or the other.
okay, I just want to point out that by looking at a demand reduction of 100% to the growers, they're not going to want to pay for something that you're forcing the amount of business for.
Right.
So something that, that 25 to 50 is kind of where you need to look at.
I agree.
I also want to comment, let's see, I guess this is where Supervisor Wheeler's comment would come into play, is that you wanted an analysis based on Stevie's last analysis that she did on what had been converted from rangeland or unirrigated to farmland. I would take that a step further and look at what unirrigated land has been developed into any form of development. Because as things continue, despite the fact, and I think farmers recognize that there has been agricultural development that shouldn't have occurred, there has been other development that has occurred that also needs to be looked at and assessed. Because at the end of the day, you can turn a pump off to the farmers or to an orchard or to, some crop. That pump can be turned off. You cannot turn a pump off to anything else, right, to anything that is community-based. So I think the analysis also needs to include, if we're going to play fair, right, you need to look at what development has occurred in that span of time, just generally speaking.
Well, the thing is that, you know, because I agree with you there, but one thing that we've done since I've been on board, since 2007, they have never got to do nothing like that without water balance. We can't do that with the farmers. We've never been able to do that with the farmers. We've always had water balance, and they've brought in, you know, acre feet of water, just like Tim Jones has from Kern County, that you can't even do that anymore. But anyway, and they have followed their own lands too, so they don't have to, you know, figure out how to get that water balance. And when we done that water study, you know, 95% of all groundwater comes from farmers, and 5%, well, it actually is only 3% from the people in Madera County. 2% was, you know, they just said it by evaporation or whatever it might be. So and that's when I bugged Stevie so much about getting those numbers, because when I drive around here, see all this land that was done, and I mean, it's 40,000 acres. We haven't developed 40,000 acres in this whole county yet. Everything put together, including Chowchilla and Madera City. So, you know, we can put it in there, but I don't think it's as valuable as what it is, what's happening.
And I understand your comments and your frustration, but at the same time, I will point out that the ordinance for water balance didn't come into play until after the litigation that we had with one of the developments. So I think there was an effort for water balance prior to.
We did Tim Jones's thing. They had to have water balance.
I understand that.
Before any lawsuit that you did.
No, and I understand that, but what I'm getting at is that that was a requirement under that development, but not necessarily a ordinance that was in place that we all know, and we've, you know, voiced the concerns that an ordinance can be changed at any time, depending on who's up here, right? The other thing is, you know, unfortunately, as we do move forward and things start to shift, right, fallowed land is going to be developed into something, whatever that might be, whether it's recharge areas, whether it's natural habitat, whether it's industrial use, whatever it might be, commercial purposes, residential uses, right? We're seeing now under Sigma, people or developments, whether they're agriculture developments, commercial, whatever it might be, right? We're seeing them take that land out, and I'll use development, I'll use business development, residential, commercial development that's coming into play, right? They're saying that they're in balance because they've taken this out of production. It's no longer being farmed, right? But at the end of the day, if we have another 15, 16 year and they're continuing to pump to put water into 10,000 businesses or whatever it is, you'll never shut that pump off. That's the Farm Bureau's point. So you're not, at the end of the day, you might be saving a little bit of water, but that pump will never be shut off. So when this becomes the concrete jungle, you're still going to have a water issue. Does that make sense? That's the stance we came from.
3% compared to 95%. Big.
Right. So we're just looking at it from, if you're going to do that type of analysis, I mean, let's even the playing field and look at how much development has occurred.
I don't mind that, Rusty. If you could add, you know, how much land has been converted in Madera County into homes, businesses, commercial, I don't care what it is, and see what that number is. I'd love to have that so we can have a good argument on it.
Yeah, because we'll know what's being used either way on that, agriculturally or residentially.
Yep.
Right. So I think that maybe brings in Matt Schreiber into that analysis.
Wouldn't it be important to limit that to what's in the GSA?
Yeah, it's got to be in the, that's right, it's got to be in those pond
Yeah,
uses.
not City of Madera, not, you know, but it's what's in the Madera County GSA.
Can't be North Fork.
Right.
Can't be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And then as for the, I'm sorry, I know I've gone over my time, but as for the timeline.
We've been interrupting your time.
You have. So as for the timeline, you know, I understand, and I've shared it before, the 2015 date kind of sits with everyone, and that people should have known in 2015, right? But as I've previously mentioned, most of the time, a lot of growers, they may have heard about it, they don't know what happened. You made a valid point, Supervisor Rogers, that you wanted to know, could you continue on because you needed a number, right? But we don't have a number.
Right.
We didn't have a number in 2015. We didn't have a number in 2018. We don't have a number today. right? So for you to go back and to cut people off essentially back to a 2015 date, what are the ramifications of that? What are the consequences? What happens to those people? Because despite the fact that I've argued before that not everybody knew about it, I mean, they didn't even know what a number was. We still don't know what a number is. So what does that look like for those people? And I know, I met with Stephanie the other day and I asked 3 or 4 times, what are the consequences once you lock that in, right? And from a legal standpoint, what does that look like? And maybe that's a presentation from Michael Linden in the future. But what happens to those people? If you set a 2015 or a 2018, what happens to them because they planted in 2019?
That's a valid question.
And I don't know that anybody has an answer to that just yet, but that's something that needs to be known. To your comment about people rushed in because they knew, I'm going to argue that that is not valid, right? At that point, we headed into a drought. Land prices dropped because we didn't have water. I mean, Madera, Chowchilla and Madera ID didn't see water for 2 or 3 years. And prices soared on the commodity side. So people were trying to figure out how to capitalize. And when the market goes up and you can still access groundwater, let's plant because we can find land for cheap.
I probably should have qualified that remark because it was those who called me that knew.
So, and maybe that's
asking me
the
how
case.
to get around it, so
But
they knew.
Right, but where we're at today is that, one, we need to know what that number is. We still don't know the number.
Right.
So although we recognize, and I think everyone understands there needs to be a cutoff period, there definitely needs to be some thorough analysis and discussion about it. I think that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Trieber, Chief of Development Services. I just wanted to take a brief moment here just to address a little bit of Ms. Becksted's very poignant and good points that she did make, at least directly on the development side, just for the board and anybody who may be listening's understanding. The majority of the development that we've seen occur since this time, right, is not within the county GSA, right? Riverstone is completely within Root Creek, and that aspect. Tesoro Viejo was in the MID, it's in the irrigation district boundaries, so it's reliant on surface water. And so I would say that at every point in time, this board and previous boards, when we talk of those development projects, we're light years ahead of any of our neighbors or really any state rulings and guidelines in how those projects were required and conditioned. It is correct that on a California Environmental Quality Act status, that the county has looked at those projects historically from a water usage as a less than significant impact due to the fact that you're pulling those lands out of irrigation, which the argument was utilizes greater. But that is not what those projects were conditioned on. That was just simply an environmental analysis. We required, and the board required, substantially more from those projects. And the state really, we see more and more restrictions on building code for xeriscape, landscape efficient model ordinances, low flow toilets, purple pipes, right? All of those things are, in place to really cut down on that. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention and throw that out there as well.
Matt, didn't the 2 specific projects you just mentioned, I believe Tesoro Viejo brought in 3,500 acre feet
No, that
in a
was,
deal with
Tim.
MID, and
that there, yeah.
Riverstone brought in similar amount. I think it's 3,000 or 3,500 up higher. The 3,500.
Yeah, so
Kern County.
Tesoro Viejo is solely reliant upon surface water for the build out of their development, and they acquire water from MID. They have other sources of water as well. The Riverstone project, that development is groundwater, and it is utilized for groundwater. How they got to their balance, and this was 2007, remember, before Sigma was even related, right? The board required that project acquire roughly 14,000 acre feet of surface water. And so they've acquired that and they have flown water. So their water balance plan is to shut off the ag pumps for the agricultural irrigation out there and flow their 14,000+ acre feet of surface water that they've acquired for that ag land. And that's how they make up that balance. That surface water, as I understand it, is solely available for farming. It is not for municipal, M&I purposes. So that's why I say the development is pumping groundwater. However, they're offsetting that by flowing the surface water, right? And they put in infrastructure and
They're recharging essentially.
it's what we refer to as in lieu recharge, right?
Right.
So rather than pumping, we're going to flow the surface water over those irrigated lands out there. And that can be used for recharge. And in the Gateway Village plan, it identifies a large recharge basin and different facilities there that Root Creek is responsible for there. So there is, a lot that's been done over the years out there. So,
Yep.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody, for your comments and for the analysis. We've been looking at this situation for a number of years now, and there's been different committees formed and different boards and so forth. And we've actually gone through 2020 without any type of pumping restrictions. We're going to be going through 2021 without any kind of pumping restrictions. In the meantime, we are definitely in a down water year this year, significant down recharge and rainwater year. Last year, it was under what the averages have been, and we had a short MID season. So we're looking at, again, major depletion of our water table, and if we don't have a plan set by 1/1/22 and start restricting pumping in 2022, which is, 8.5 months from now, something
Exactly.
like that, we are in
Tomorrow almost.
Yeah, we're in utter
Huge deficit.
dereliction of our duties as a board of supervisors in
Absolutely.
serving the people of this county.
Yep.
And so, we're going to do whatever we can do, Stephanie, to support you and your efforts to answer questions. But you have our full support in terms of moving forward on this, and that we have a clear plan that people know what they will not be able to farm starting 1/1/22 in terms of what they're able to pull out of the ground. If they're able to farm their ground without any water next year, then that's wonderful.
Hallelujah.
But I don't think that's going to happen. We're going to have to, it's for the good of agriculture and the people of Madera County that we move forward on that. So thank you so much, and thank you everybody on the team that are getting us to that
Getting
point.
to this point. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's been very comprehensive and cohesive as well. The cooperation from the farming industry has been unprecedented. This has been a very great cooperative effort countywide, and you've made it largely that way because of your outreach and the discussions. I believe it's been just amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Reason we hired you, huh?
The next item on the agenda would be item 6C, Property Tax Administration.
Uh-oh. Come on up, Tracy. You just sit there. I see you. Come on. Oh, you got experts to do it?
Morning,
Good morning.
Catherine Nainoa with the Auditor Controller's Office. I'm just here to present the property tax admin fee.
Yeah.
And,
No questions?
You can pull that down a little bit. So no,
oh, this,
that too if you want to, but yeah, the whole mic will come down.
okay. I don't have no exhibit or anything. We have this year 4.3 million that we would like to distribute. Not all of it gets distributed because the schools do not participate in the property tax admin fee. But most of it is reimbursable.
Make a motion that we approve and set the public hearing for May 4th, 2021 at 2:38.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments from the public regarding this particular item? If not, we'll go with a roll call vote.
Great job.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes,
Vote pass.
Thank you.
Vote
Thank
passes
you.
5-0.
thank you. We have pending legislation, and the first item is 6A, and it's regarding a letter of support of AB 350.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, it's 8A, and it is a
8A, okay, sorry.
is a Assembly Bill 350, which has been put forward by Assemblymember Villa Pueda, and it has to do with what you've been talking about this morning in terms of implementation of SIGMA and some things that he would like to get in front of the legislature. This is a letter of support.
Okay,
Move to approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the public regarding this item? If not, roll call vote.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes,
Vote passes 5-0.
thank you. Item 8B.
So 8B is a letter in support of, I guess to put it in a nutshell, push more of the state VSO money out to the counties because that's where the contacts are made with the veterans. And we think that pushing this, I think $5.4 million out into local assistant to increase the budgets of our local CVSOs is the most appropriate use of these state funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
I don't know, the state, they seem to have better ideas. Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to
We're going to impeach you, son.
comment on this item? If not, roll call vote.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes,
Vote passes 5-0.
very good, thank you. 8C, AB 559.
8C is a letter of opposition to AB 559. Yes, don't ask me if that was on purpose or if we ended up with our area code just merely by chance. It is from the state, as the chairman mentioned. So this has to do with some changes to the makeup and selection of the board for the San Joaquin River Conservancy that I don't think is the appropriate, the best idea for Madera County, but I would also defer to our current representative, Supervisor Frazier, if he wishes to comment on this letter of opposition.
I want him to, and I
Yeah.
want to too, because
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. So the way this bill first started off, it was kind of fixing a problem that we've had. Maybe you've seen that we had a 14-person board because it should be 15. But the Madera County representative goes back and forth between, for 4-year term, someone who lives along the river, operates a business along the river. And then it goes back after that to someone that's nominated by by an environmental agency. And so anytime that there was an environmental agency, we'd always have a representative. When I first got on that board, we had a representative for about a year, and then it changed back to this other one. Melissa did exhaustive searches of sending letters to every APN along the river, literally anybody who lived along the river. And we only ever got one person that was interested. Sent them to the governor. Governor didn't appoint, said you wanted more people. We can never get any more for a pool of applicants. So the original intent of this bill was just to solidify, and it was going to be, you know, the environmental. It should have, in my opinion, included property owners as well as someone, just kind of combine the two and just not have it switch back and forth. And that's the way it was originally packaged, was just to kind of shore that up. And Arambula picked up the legislation, even though it's not in his district, but that's fine. I do stuff in District 5 all the time without Tom knowing. And I was in support of that. And then all of a sudden I was getting calls from everywhere and, you know, you're supporting this. And I said, yeah, it's a pretty easy one. But then it was expanding who was on. I actually like the fact that it expanded to have tribal representation. I think that would be good. What I didn't like is now it has the governor gets to appoint another person that kind of however he wants to appoint it, with nothing other than that it would push forward the states or for state issues. There's already numerous state agencies that are on the board. I think it would take away local control. You know, if they want to expand it by 2, I think there should be another. You know, you have the tribal representative, another local representative. But like everything, when it started off, the intent was good, and then as it changed, it's lunchtime now. Yeah. One second. There you go, bud. You know, it just changed and morphed into something. You know, I never got called from Arambula's office to discuss what was happening when the legislation was supposed to be about Madera County, about, you know, right along my entire southern boundary as the river, and not one call to discuss any of it. And it was just very unfortunate, especially when you have AB 559. We have our area code, and we can't even pass this one through. That should have been a very easily done. So those are my problems with it. It just morphed into something it didn't need to be. And so I think we should oppose it with some of those corrections and that are listed in the letter.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you. Sorry, Tom.
I read that article, and Merrick Woslinski, whatever his name is, that don't like none of us in Madera County, in the Fresno Bee last night, and reading that, and then just what you've talked to me about, you know, in the last couple of years about what you guys have been doing, which I think has really been really successful on that River Trail deal. This is just killing it. I think it's really trying to take local control from Madera and Fresno counties to do what we've been doing for what's been doing 15 now years or something. And I think it's great to put a tribal member on there, because I mean that's one of their main feeding grounds all the way from 1,000 years ago. So, and then have 2 appointees. The way I read it, it was 2 appointees the governor's going to do, and I don't think that's right. We have 2 appointees that the governor does on our air board, and I tell you what, sometimes it's really hard to work with those appointees that the governor does. And there also is on the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, they got 2 appointees, and I can't tell you, you know, most of the time they have no idea what's going on. They do that.
Well, and actually, and the governor appoints all of the at-large members from the local area. Because like even when, you know, we just sent up our list, we got quite a few, 6 people, and then we send that up, we approve it at the Board of Supervisors, and then that still gets sent to the governor. So he's still making the appointment out of that list. We don't even get to make that appointment as the Board of Supervisors.
So we want to add more to it then, see? And the other thing what you might suggest, Brett, is if they can't find somebody that's right along the river that owns property, why don't they put a thing out like a mile away from the river on both sides, landowners? And that they have to be a landowner, along that area, so that they can have a little bit wider selection that maybe somebody would want to be doing that, instead of.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we had that was part of what we had originally talked about with this. And really, the problem is that it just like if you want to expand the representation, don't remove any of the opportunity for somebody, because now as it would be written in this legislation, if you're a landowner, unless you get one of the different groups to nominate you to the Board of Supervisors to then nominate you again, why take out landowners at all? Just add them as part of the list of possible applicants.
Yep. And I think that we not only need to write that letter, we need to write that and send that letter to a lot of the legislators up there, not just a few. This is very important, I think, for our valley right here. So, and if we don't go through, we're going to lose
control.
More.
Yeah. Yeah, more than we have already.
Yeah.
Very good. So
make that motion, buddy.
I move to approve the opposition letter.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? If not, roll call vote.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. And item 8D.
Yes, Chairman, 8D is a letter to the governor in support of adopting the federal weekly hours work standard for herders in California. AB 1066, adopted in 2016, changed quite a bit how ag workers were compensated. And in this case, we believe that the federal standard is more appropriate for herders, both from actually paying them and from making sure that whatever group or entity they're attached to as a herder maintains their financial viability. Otherwise, the overtime that might accumulate from herding activities may be such that people just move out of state, which would be, we have ag is still one of the very top items in terms of the California economy, and it also is actually a minor way in terms of where they're moving their flocks from and to knock down fire hazards at the forest floor or the valley floor type activity.
Right. We just have a fraction of the sheep herders and sheep herds that we used to have here in California at this time, and that would just.
They want to drive the rest of them away.
Yep.
And it is one of the great things that sheep do to our property.
Right. So are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item?
And we wonder why people are changing their unirrigated land into irrigated land.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Hi, Christina Beckstead again, Madera County Farm Bureau. I just wanted to add a little more context to it and ask that as all of you engage with the governor's office or folks at the state level, that you encourage this. There have been efforts over the last couple of years to address this issue. 1066 is just devastating to the sheep and goat industry. We have roughly 3,500 producers in California. California is the #1 wool state and the #2 state as far as quantity of lambs. This would increase, AB 26 essentially increases wages by about 50%. So 40 to 80% more than what our neighboring states are paying. So essentially what it would do is drive out the sheep and goat industry out of California. So you'd eliminate one entire industry. So there have been a lot of efforts that I've also helped with in the last couple of years in Sacramento in an effort to get legislators to address this and try to make a modification to AB 1066. Unfortunately, because of the politics, we haven't been able to get very far, and the next action is an effort for the governor to take matter into his own hands and get something done. So any effort that we can get from the Board of Supervisors up the chain to Sacramento is very helpful for this industry.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you think that there's a nexus between the environmental lobby trying to eliminate grazing in the mountain regions? You think that there's a connection there, or you think that they're not thinking that far? Because I think they go roundabout trying to destroy industries. I think they make efforts through the back door, so to speak.
Right. So there is a nexus, and we have emphasized that, right? I think people have forgotten the importance of grazing, whether it's lambs, lambs or goats, or even cattle for that matter, right? You know, ag is a bad word to a lot of people. That said, in light of the current historical fires that we have had, right, in the last few years, people are starting to see that nexus a little bit. We're starting to see more of it. Unfortunately, I think in this instance, there's just a lot of politics in the way. 1066 was implemented by a legislator who is, you know, a firm supporter of workers. Not that anyone else isn't. But unfortunately, with this labor force, I mean, they were carved out specifically because, I mean, they were carved out, irrigators are carved out, maritime employees were carved out in the labor code because of the difference in the type of job, right? And then the other thing that you have to remember with sheep herders is that the primary workforce is an H-2A employee. So they already have a whole nother level of standards that they have to meet to employ those employees, right? So they're already paying additional costs in addition to what they were mandated under the Department of, what is it, DIR? Department of Industrial Relations, is that what it is? The Labor Code section. So, you know, they already had set standards for those, you know, 3 or 4 different types of work. Because they are this 24/7 job, although you don't necessarily work 24/7, right? But when you're herding sheep, someone has to be on site 24 hours a day, whether you're working or not. No different than when you're out to sea on a fishing boat or any other situation.
Exactly.
So they were carved out specifically, and although we believe that 1066 wasn't intended to impact them, it did. And so that's why something needs to be changed, but unfortunately, the proposer of the bill, nobody wants to go up against the proposer of the bill. And so at this point, we need the state to kind of step in and the governor to take some action to fix this. Because those H-2A employees, I mean, like I said, they already have a whole nother standard that has to be, you know, housing has to be provided, food has to be provided, cell phones have to be provided, right? Like there's a whole nother level of expense with those employees that some folks don't take into account.
Yeah, for a fact.
So, thank
I
you.
have no idea what they're even talking.
Nope.
Thank you.
I move to approve the letter.
Second. And sorry, I beat you.
All right.
But that's something we need to send to everybody too, because we
Agreed.
need maybe like get Christine or something to help write something.
Yeah,
and
she's got a
explain it
good
to
grip on the
the
policy. so-
legislators, because, you know, hunting where I hunt all the time, out of state, you know, there's tons of sheep herders, and those guys are happy. I mean,
Makes
I've
for
never seen one
better
that's not.
all-around wildlife, really.
Yeah, I mean, they hunt, they fish, they do everything, you know, but they
Yep.
protect their sheep,
Yep.
their dogs.
Exactly.
Just, it's amazing how they do, and there used to be a lot of them around here. They used to, the South Fork Bluffs, there out of North Fork, the Indians used to always tell me in the fall and spring, that'd be pure white with sheep going up there.
Yep.
You know, they take 20,000 sheep in there in the old days.
I can tell you from
Now you
experience,
can't even take one.
there's a huge difference in areas that are grazed by sheep and cattle. And the amount of wildlife that comes into those regions after they graze it is just fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And it creates a break for a fire as well. So.
Yeah.
Very good. Roll call vote.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Wheeler?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Chairman Poitras?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to supervisor reports. Supervisor Frazier.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Rogers.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Gonzalez.
Yes. I attended the first 5 meeting and the Madera Chaplaincy Board of Directors. And we also tomorrow will be hosting, our office is hosting a walk, talk, and shop event. We're meeting that at Courthouse Park, and we're promoting walking and shopping. Our downtown will be
You have high
wearing.
heels on?
No, I will not.
What? Oh, come on.
And we're just,
Wear mine.
you're throwing me off. Anyway, we're promoting, shopping downtown and just talking about district issues. So if anyone is available to join us, we'd be happy to have you. So thank you.
Thank you. And Supervisor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you very much. A couple of things. We had a Gateway Partners meeting with Yosemite last week, and you see Cecilia, whatever her last name is, the new district ranger there, whatever the title is, superintendent of Yosemite, announced that they will, as of 21st this month, you got to start, well, actually it starts 21st of May. You got to have reservations to get in Yosemite again. But they open up, it's a lot more open now, so 7 days ahead of time. You can do it they start opening on the 21st of April or May the 21st. And it's only 3 days instead of 7 days going there.
So right now, there are no reservations?
There are no reservations now until the 21st of May. And then it goes to September 30th. And they opened up from 3,000 plus cars a day to 5,000 cars plus. They increased a lot of the camping spots. The village parking and camping has been expanded. The village parking expanded 165 new spots, and that's pretty good. Camp 4 has 25 new camping sites. And there's more than that. I just couldn't get them all open. There won't be no shuttle this year. So that brings me up to our yesterday's meeting with the quarterly meeting of the Yards group, they run the buses in there. Fresno County, they wanted to be the gateway to Yosemite 4 years ago now, I guess it was. And they put a bunch of money in to run the bus from Fresno Airport all the way up to Yosemite. And the biggest ridership mostly right now in the buses going up there is from Oakhurst up. And so they're probably not going to run to Fresno because we got enough money. They cut how many times they were running it last year because of all the pandemic. Actually, the year before they started cutting it back. So they have enough money to do this year. They've been wanting us to be another member of the Yards counties, Tuolumne, Mono, Stead, and Mariposa. And they gave us that presentation. And I asked them maybe to come here, give us another presentation. It's about $40,000 to $50,000 a year to be a member. I have to be a voting member. I'm not a voting member now. I'm always on the agenda to vote. I think it's really important that we vote to get that bus running from Oakhurst. They want to run it from Oakhurst. They think it'd be really efficient, especially with the new 3 hotels. They even brought that up yesterday. All the other counties agreed with that. And I talked to Patricia Taylor. There might be some money out of that too, out of some of the transportation for transit to get that, be part of that too. I just think it's very important that we have a say in that and how they're doing it and not doing it, especially with the increased cars and no shuttle. They're actually looking at maybe not ever doing a shuttle again. Wow. So that I think is a bad deal, but
I do too.
But that's where I think the bus is going to be so much better. Get some more people up there without fighting all those cars or something. When I go up there in the summer, unless I go to the quarterly meetings when they used to have them, instead of online, because I would go up there I'd leave my house like at 6 or something, beat all the traffic, have a parking place, and no problem. But the time I got ready to get out of there in the summertime, I might be just in the valley an hour trying to get out.
We always use the shuttle to get to various
Yeah.
locations,
Absolutely.
park and then use the shuttle.
So anyway, that's just my spiel. Great meeting. Both meetings were pretty good, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. I attended a Finish 99 meeting on Friday. It's a coalition of agencies from Tulare, Madera, and Merced counties that are working to complete 99, in particular those counties. And Tulare and Merced counties have agreed to focus on Madera County as a first priority, particularly the stretch from Avenue 7 to Avenue 12. So there was probably a dozen of us, and we have a lobbyist actually that we're working with that works with Tulare County. Unfortunately, as everybody knows, the state of California, or Caltrans, and CalSTA refused to support our applications for federal funding for Highway 99 as well as Highway 41 projects because they considered them to be widening projects. And so it's a fight that we're going to have to continue. They talk about emissions and things of that sort as far as it's going to encourage more traffic. That is totally incorrect. If all cars on the road were 100% electric today, we still need the widening of those roads. It's a public safety, it's a public goods movement issue. It has nothing to do with carbon emissions, and unfortunately, that's the mantra, that's the mindset. It's a religious movement in Sacramento right now, moving forward. So that's what we're up against. So that's why if you see somebody from Merced County or Tulare County, thank them for their efforts to work with us. And once we get that completed, we're going to be working with Merced counties and Tulare County to get 99 completed in their counties as well. So I just.
60 years we haven't had this.
It's been in 1959, this freeway was 4 lanes. It was completed 63 years later. It is still 4 lanes. Absolutely. And we had probably 30% of the population in the state of California. It's doubled since 1970, but it is just unbelievable. It is so ludicrous. It is so irresponsible.
Most dangerous highway in the U.S.
Exactly.
And still over 100 miles that are not.
It's 16 miles in Madera County, and the leaders of Caltrans, not District 6 and District 10 here, they've been working, they're supporting our projects. We're talking about the director of Caltrans in Sacramento, and we're talking about David Kim, the transportation director for the state of California. They are using the executive order from Governor Newsom in 19/19 issued on September 20th, 2019 as the gospel document. It's a document that has never hit the legislature, has never been out for public review, but that is their gospel, and they fall back on that every single time. It's like brains are checked at the door, logic is no more. We're going to march with this executive order. So again,
talk to legislators.
we're going to start.
Our lobbyists.
Yep.
Say, hey, we got to get that overturned.
And that's what this coalition, we're going to be working together to make that happen. Absolutely.
Good deal.
So thank you, Mr. CAO.
Nothing additional to report.
Very good. Council.
Yes, Chairman, just Lozano Smith started having technical difficulties on April 7th. That was last Wednesday. And our system continues to be compromised. And so wanted to say to all those that we provide services to that our emails, and County IT actually did some preventative measures to make sure that nothing is, that we're the safest we can be. And so you will not be receiving emails from us. Right now, it's still not restored. So thank you for all the patience. And we're trying to do some workarounds to make sure that we continue to get the work product out. But it's a long haul, so just a little update there.
So IT has been quarantining their emails. It does delay them significantly. So I guess if you get a lot of texts from many of the county council members, it's because they want to make sure that you know that they're working on what you've asked them to work on, and then eventually the emails get through. and we've had no difficulties as a result of whatever that issue was there.
Very good, thank you. Clerk of the board?
Nothing to report, thank you.
All right, and with that, at the stroke of noon, we shall adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.